As an actor, I try to do two things. I try to entertain and try to get a message across, and even though I play a tough guy.
Challenging, still he don't get a shot at the titles. Working with a guy like Sylvester Stallone, he's a perfectionist. There might be people that just don't like you for whatever reason. A lot of people out there don't like me. I deal with that.
Deep inside, I'm an old-fashioned, tough mama's boy.
It's love, though. The people love me, and I love them for loving me. I give it back to them and whatnot. I am honored. I'm a people person, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that they have a love for me after all these years.
You're one of the toughest guys in Hollywood, wearing your signature gold chains and mohawk haircut. Everyone knows you don't mess around, but what happens when other big-name actors try to push you around? Well, if you're Mr. T, you push back even harder. Today, we're going to talk about the 6 actors that Mr. T couldn't stand working with during his Hollywood career. These weren't just little disagreements or hurt feelings. These were full-blown battles that made movie sets feel like war zones. Some of these stories will shock you, and others might make you see your favorite actors in a completely different light. Mr. T always said he tried to do 2 things as an actor: entertain people and share a good message. But sometimes that meant standing up to Hollywood bullies who thought they could walk all over him. Let's dive into these incredible behind-the-scenes stories that most people never heard about. The King of Cool meets his match. First up is George Peppard, and this story will blow your mind. When the A-Team started filming in 1983, George Peppard thought he was the undisputed star of the show. And why wouldn't he? The man had serious Hollywood credentials. He'd been in movies with Audrey Hepburn, had classical acting training, and decades of experience. He played Colonel Hannibal Smith, the leader of the team, so naturally he expected to be the boss, both on screen and behind the scenes. But something totally unexpected happened that changed everything. While Peppard was this smooth, sophisticated character, audiences went absolutely crazy for Mr. T's B.A. Baracus. Kids everywhere started copying his style, wearing gold chains and trying to get mohawk haircuts like him. They repeated his famous lines at school. When you walked into a toy store, guess whose action figure was flying off the shelves? It wasn't Hannibal Smith's. Mr. T became the breakout star of the A-Team, and George Peppard couldn't handle it. The tension started small but grew into something much bigger and nastier. Peppard would make mean comments about Mr. T's acting in front of the crew during breaks. He'd roll his eyes when Mr. T said his famous catchphrases during filming. He even started showing up late to scenes that featured Mr. T, claiming he had more important things to do. When contract time came around for the 2nd season, Mr. T's agents asked for a big raise. They pointed out that he was clearly the most popular character on the show, and the network should pay him what he was worth. The TV executives agreed without even arguing about it. They gave Mr. T a salary that was actually higher than what George Peppard was making. When Peppard found out about this, he went ballistic. Here was this newcomer with no fancy acting school background, making more money than a seasoned professional like himself. Peppard started talking to reporters and basically trashing Mr. T in interviews. He questioned his acting ability and complained that the show was focusing too much on one character. But here's where the story gets really intense. Mr. T got his hands on an entertainment magazine where Peppard had called him not a real actor and said he was the worst performer on the show, who was ruining the quality of the production. Now, if you know anything about Mr. T, you know he doesn't handle disrespect quietly. Mr. T marched straight to Peppard's trailer with that magazine in his hand, and his face showed the kind of anger that made people get out of his way fast. What happened next became legendary among everyone working on the show. Mr. T stood right outside Peppard's trailer and started reading those insulting quotes out loud in his booming voice, making sure everyone on the entire set could hear exactly what had been said about him. He demanded that Peppard come out of his trailer and explain himself face to face like a man, instead of hiding behind magazine interviews and talking to reporters behind his back. But guess what? Peppard refused to come out. He stayed locked inside his trailer while Mr. T called him out in front of the entire cast and crew. It was absolutely humiliating for someone of Peppard's stature and experience, But it also showed everyone exactly where the real power stood. Mr. T wasn't going to be pushed around by anyone, no matter how famous they were or how long they'd been in the business. From that day forward, the two men barely spoke to each other, unless the cameras were rolling and they had no choice. They would film their scenes together with cold, professional efficiency, but the moment the director yelled, "Cut!" they went to opposite sides of the set, like they couldn't stand being near each other. The Rocky Road to Respect. Our next story involves one of the biggest action stars of all time, Sylvester Stallone. But here's the crazy part. Their relationship started with an ironic twist that nobody could have predicted.
Years before Rocky III made them both even more famous, they had an encounter that set up everything that would happen later. Mr. T was working as a bodyguard for heavyweight boxing champion Leon Spinks when this determined stranger showed up wanting to meet the fighter. The stranger claimed his name was Sylvester Stallone, said he'd made a movie called Rocky, and insisted he really needed to congratulate the new champion. But here's the thing. Mr. T had never heard of Rocky or Sylvester Stallone. To him, this was just another guy with a story trying to talk his way past security. So he did what he was paid to do. He blocked the door and said absolutely not. Stallone tried to explain who he was and how important this meeting would be. But Mr. T wasn't budging even an inch. His job was to protect Leon Spinks, not worry about hurting some random stranger's feelings. The conversation got heated, with Stallone insisting he was somebody important, and Mr. T making it crystal clear that he didn't care who this guy thought he was. Fast forward a few years. When Stallone was developing Rocky III, he remembered that encounter with the intimidating bodyguard who couldn't be pushed around or intimidated. He needed a villain who could believably threaten Rocky Balboa, someone who looked like he could actually hurt the Italian stallion in the ring. More importantly, he needed someone with that special quality that made audiences believe he was truly dangerous. When Stallone's people tracked down Mr. T and offered him the role of Clubber Lang, it seemed like a perfect match. But Mr. T's transition from bodyguard to movie star wasn't as smooth as anyone expected. The problem started during filming. Stallone had mapped out every single punch, every movement, and every camera angle with military precision. He needed the actors to hit their marks exactly, so the fights would look convincing without anyone getting seriously hurt. This is standard procedure for action movies. Safety first, always. But Mr. T understood the safety requirements and still felt that some of the choreography made Clubber Lang look weak or hesitant. During one particularly intense training scene, Mr. T stopped right in the middle of a take and told Stallone directly that Clubber wouldn't move that way. He demonstrated what he thought the character would do instead, throwing punches with a different rhythm and a more aggressive stance. His suggestions were actually good from a character standpoint, but they completely messed up Stallone's carefully planned choreography. Stallone found himself caught between respecting Mr. T's natural instincts for the character and maintaining control over his own movie. He knew that Mr. T's authentic presence was one of the film's biggest strengths, but he also couldn't let an inexperienced actor take over the directing process. The conversation that followed was tense but professional, with both men trying to find a way to work together. They ended up spending way more time rehearsing and having detailed discussions about each scene before filming began. Stallone would explain his overall vision, and Mr. T would offer suggestions for how Clubber might react differently. Sometimes they even filmed multiple versions of the same scene to see which approach worked better when they put the movie together. This back and forth improved the final product, but it also slowed down production and made the film cost a lot more money. Other actors on set noticed that Mr. T was getting way more input into his scenes than most newcomers would ever expect to get. But the real tension came during the publicity tour. Stallone expected to be the main focus of interviews and promotional events, just like he had been for the previous Rocky films. But reporters and audiences were fascinated by Mr. T's larger-than-life personality and his memorable catchphrases that were already becoming part of popular culture. Interview segments that were supposed to focus on Stallone's return, as Rocky often became dominated by Mr. T's colourful responses to questions. Entertainment shows wanted to hear Mr. T talk about his background, his philosophy, and his predictions for upcoming fights. Meanwhile, Stallone found himself pushed to the side, discussing boring technical filmmaking details, while his villains stole the spotlight. This shift in media attention was deeply frustrating for Stallone, who had poured years of his life into developing the Rocky character and building the franchise from nothing. Seeing his own villain get more coverage than the hero felt like losing control of his own creation. The female co-star who fought back. Now let's talk about Melinda Kalia, and this story shows a different side of Mr. T's conflicts. When the A-Team was being developed for television, the creators knew they needed to add some variety to their all-male team of military misfits. Television in the early 1980s was still struggling with how to write strong female characters, especially in action shows dominated by masculine themes. Their solution was to create Amy Amanda Allen, played by Melinda Kalia, a newspaper reporter who would help the team and provide a different perspective. Kalia came to the show with serious acting credentials. She had classical theatre training and genuine dramatic aspirations beyond television work. She saw the A-Team as a stepping stone to more substantial roles in film and serious drama, not as her final destination. From the very beginning, Kalia had major concerns about how her character was being written and how women were generally portrayed on the show. She felt that Amy was too often reduced to being the token female character who needed rescuing or who served mainly as emotional support for the men. She wanted more substantial storylines and more active participation in the team's actual missions. Mr. T, meanwhile, was still learning the basics of television production and figuring out how to work with scripts, hit his marks, and develop chemistry with his co-stars. His approach to the work was straightforward and instinctive. He focused on making B.A. Baracus feel real and authentic by drawing on his own experiences and personality rather than using formal acting techniques. The problem started when Kalia began pushing aggressively for changes to her character and the show's scripts. She would spend time between takes meeting with writers and producers, trying to convince them to give Amy more meaningful storylines and a more active role in the team's operations. Her suggestions were often valid from a storytelling perspective, but they clashed with the show's established formula and the tight production schedule. Mr. T didn't understand why Kalia seemed so unhappy with the success they were all experiencing together. The A-Team was a genuine hit show that was making everyone involved both famous and wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. From his practical perspective, they should all be grateful for the opportunity and focused on making the best show possible within the established format that was clearly working with audiences. Their different approaches to the work created noticeable tension on the set that affected everyone involved. Kalia would spend considerable time discussing script changes and character development with writers and producers, often delaying filming while these creative meetings took place. Mr. T preferred to focus on perfecting his own performance and building solid working relationships with the crew members who made the show possible. He began to see her constant suggestions and script discussions as complaining rather than genuine creative collaboration. From his perspective, they had been given an incredible opportunity that most actors would kill for, and spending time complaining about the details instead of appreciating the bigger picture seemed ungrateful and counterproductive. The situation got much worse because of the show's demanding production schedule and the constant pressure to maintain high ratings in a competitive television landscape. Television production moves extremely fast, with very little time available for extensive rewrites or detailed character development discussions. When Kalia pushed for script changes, it sometimes delayed filming or required last-minute adjustments that frustrated everyone involved in the production. Mr. T's reaction to these delays was typically direct and unfiltered. He believed strongly in showing up prepared, doing the work professionally, and moving efficiently to the next scene without unnecessary complications. The breaking point came during the filming of the first season's final episodes. Kalia had been pushing particularly hard for her character to have a more substantial and active role in a major action sequence that was central to the episode's plot. She wanted Amy to be directly involved in the team's dangerous mission, rather than staying safely on the sidelines while the men handled all the real action. The writers and producers were actually willing to consider her suggestions and potentially incorporate some of her ideas, but the discussions required time and extensive script revisions that pushed the production schedule to its limits. During one of these production delays, Mr. T made pointed comments about how some people couldn't just be satisfied with the incredible success they had been given. He didn't mention Kalia by name during his complaints, but everyone on the set knew exactly who he was talking about and what situation had prompted his frustration. His words were quickly reported back to Kalia by well-meaning crew members, and she was both hurt and angry about being characterized as ungrateful when she was simply trying to improve the show. The professional athlete turned actor, Carl Weathers brought serious boxing credentials and acting experience to the Rocky franchise. He had been a professional football player before transitioning to acting, and his portrayal of Apollo Creed in the first 2 Rocky films had established him as a legitimate action star with real athletic ability. When Mr. T joined Rocky III as Clubber Lang, Weathers initially saw him as just another celebrity stunt casting choice. The tension between them started during the film's early boxing training sessions. Weathers had worked extensively with professional boxing trainers and choreographers to develop Apollo Creed's fighting style. He understood the technical aspects of boxing and took pride in making his fight scenes look authentic and believable to audiences who knew the sport. Mr. T approached the boxing training with his characteristic intensity, but he had no formal boxing background beyond street fighting and general physical fitness. His fighting style was more about raw power and intimidation than technical precision and fancy footwork. Weathers watched Mr. T's training sessions and made it clear that he didn't think this approach would work for a major motion picture. He had suggestions for how the fight scenes should be choreographed based on his experience from the previous Rocky films. He felt that Mr. T's character needed more sophisticated boxing technique to be believable as a serious threat to Rocky Balboa, who had already faced skilled opponents like Apollo Creed. Mr. T disagreed with this assessment completely. He argued that Clubber Lang's strength came from his street fighting background and raw aggression, not from polished boxing technique. He felt that making Clubber too technically perfect would undermine the character's authenticity and his appeal to audiences who connected with his outsider status. The debate became heated when Weathers suggested that Mr. T should work with additional boxing trainers to improve his technique before filming the major fight scenes. Mr. T took this as a direct insult to his physical abilities and his understanding of his own character. He made it clear that he didn't need lessons from anyone about how to be intimidating or dangerous. Weathers responded that this was about creating believable action sequences for a major Hollywood film. He pointed out that audiences would notice if the boxing looked fake or poorly choreographed, and that could hurt the entire film's credibility. His concerns were legitimate from a technical standpoint, but they clashed with Mr. T's more instinctive approach. Weathers had developed a working relationship with Sylvester Stallone, based on mutual respect for each other's athletic backgrounds and professional approach to the boxing choreography. He expected Mr. T to follow the established system that had worked successfully for the previous films. But Mr. T had his own ideas about how Clubber Lang should move and fight. During takes, he would sometimes change the planned choreography to add moves or reactions that felt more natural to him. These improvisations often looked good on camera, but they messed up the carefully planned sequence of moves that Weathers and Stallone had rehearsed. Weathers became increasingly frustrated with what he saw as Mr. T's unprofessional approach to the technical demands of filmmaking. He felt that Mr. T was being selfish by changing the choreography without consulting the other actors who had to react to his movements. The safety of everyone involved depended on following the planned sequences exactly. Mr. T saw Weathers' complaints as an attempt to control his performance and limit his creative input. He felt that his natural instincts were being dismissed in favor of overly technical approaches that would make his character less authentic and less exciting for audiences. The diplomat who reached his breaking point, Dirk Benedict, came to the A-Team with a reputation as one of Hollywood's most professional and easygoing actors. His success on Battlestar Galactica had established him as a reliable performer who could handle both action sequences and character development with equal skill. He was known for getting along well with cast and crew members, avoiding conflicts, and maintaining a positive atmosphere on set. When the A-Team began production, Benedict naturally fell into the role of peacekeeper between his more volatile co-stars. He tried to smooth over the growing tensions between George Peppard and Mr. T, and later between Mr. T and other cast members. His diplomatic approach worked for a while, but the constant stress of managing other people's conflicts eventually wore him down. Benedict's problems with Mr. T started small, but grew over time. He noticed that Mr. T had very strong opinions about how scenes should be played, and wasn't shy about expressing those opinions during filming. While Benedict appreciated creative input, he felt that Mr. T sometimes pushed too hard for changes that weren't necessary or that disrupted the show's established rhythm. The first serious disagreement came during the filming of a second-season episode that featured extensive scenes between their two characters. Benedict had worked with the writers to develop some subtle character moments for Face that would show his growth and vulnerability beneath his smooth exterior. These scenes required careful timing and a delicate touch to work effectively. Mr. T felt that these character moments slowed down the episode's pace and took away from the action sequences that audiences really wanted to see. He suggested cutting or shortening several of Benedict's scenes to make room for more B.A. Baracus moments. His suggestions weren't necessarily wrong from a commercial standpoint, but they undermined the character development that Benedict had worked hard to create. Benedict tried to handle the situation diplomatically, explaining why these character moments were important for the show's long-term development and for maintaining audience interest beyond just action sequences. He pointed out that successful shows needed both exciting action and genuine character growth to keep viewers engaged season after season. Mr. T remained unconvinced by these arguments. He felt that Benedict was overthinking the show's requirements and that audiences were tuning in primarily for exciting action and memorable characters, not for subtle dramatic moments that might work better in a different type of show. The debate continued for several days and affected the filming schedule. The breaking point came when Mr. T made comments about some actors caring more about their own screen time than about making the best show possible. Benedict had always prided himself on being a team player who put the show's success ahead of his personal interests. Being characterized as selfish or ego-driven was particularly insulting to someone who had spent considerable time and energy trying to help his co-stars work together effectively. After this confrontation, Benedict stopped trying to mediate between Mr. T and other cast members. He focused on his own performance and his own scenes while avoiding involvement in conflicts that he couldn't resolve. This change in approach actually improved his own work on the show, but it also meant that tensions between other cast members escalated without his stabilizing influence. The method actor meets raw authenticity. Finally, we have James Caan, and this story shows perhaps the biggest clash of acting philosophies in Mr. T's career. James Caan brought serious dramatic credentials and method acting training to his brief collaboration with Mr. T on a television movie project in the mid-1980s. Caan was known for his intense preparation methods and his ability to disappear completely into characters through extensive research and psychological preparation. His approach to acting was the complete opposite of Mr. T's instinctive, personality-based style. The project paired them as unlikely partners in a crime drama that was supposed to showcase both actors' strengths while creating an interesting dynamic between their different backgrounds and acting styles. Caan saw the collaboration as an opportunity to work with someone who had genuine street credibility and could bring authenticity to action sequences. The problem started during the first script reading sessions. Caan had spent weeks preparing for his role, developing a detailed backstory for his character and researching similar real-life situations to inform his performance. He expected his co-star to approach the work with similar intensity and preparation. But Mr. T's method was much more straightforward and immediate. He read through the script, understood his character's motivations and objectives, and was ready to start filming without extensive preparation or analysis. His approach was based on finding the authentic emotions within himself that matched what the character was experiencing, then expressing those emotions naturally in front of the camera. Caan found this approach frustrating and unprofessional. He felt that Mr. T wasn't taking the work seriously enough, or putting in the effort necessary to create a truly compelling performance. During rehearsals, he would suggest different approaches to scenes and different ways of interpreting the character's psychology. Mr. T responded that he understood his character perfectly well, without needing to analyze every motivation or create elaborate backstories. He felt that Caan was overcomplicating what should be a straightforward performance, and was trying to impose his own acting methods on someone who worked differently but equally effectively. The tension escalated during the filming of dramatic scenes that required both actors to work closely together. Khan would use method acting techniques to get into character, sometimes staying in character between takes to maintain the emotional authenticity of his performance. He expected Mr. T to match this level of intensity and commitment. Mr. T found Khan's approach artificial and unnecessary. He could access the required emotions when the cameras were rolling without needing to maintain them constantly throughout the day. He felt that Khan's method acting was more about showing off his training than about creating better performances for the audience. The conflict came to a head when Khan made comments about the difference between real acting and mere personality projection. He suggested that some performers relied too heavily on their natural charisma instead of developing genuine acting skills through training and study. While he didn't mention Mr. T by name, everyone on the set understood who he was referring to. Mr. T's response was characteristically direct. He pointed out that his performances connected with audiences in ways that many trained actors envied, and that authenticity was more important than technique for creating memorable characters. He suggested that some actors got so caught up in their methods that they forgot about entertaining the people who were actually watching. The remainder of the production was completed professionally, but without any warmth between the two leads. Khan continued to use his method acting app, Roach, while Mr. T stuck to his instinctive style. The final product showed both approaches working effectively, but the personal relationship between the actors never recovered from their fundamental disagreement about the craft of acting. The pattern behind the conflicts. Looking at all these stories together, you can see a clear pattern that defined Mr. T's entire Hollywood career. He was someone who absolutely refused to back down when he felt disrespected or undervalued. Whether the challenge came from established veterans who questioned his credentials, or from co-stars who tried to control his creative choices, Mr. T always stood his ground. Some people might say he should have been more willing to compromise or more diplomatic in handling these situations. After all, Hollywood is built on relationships and politics as much as talent. Being difficult to work with can hurt your career in the long run. But from Mr. T's perspective, these weren't just professional disagreements. They were about respect, authenticity, and staying true to who he was as a person and as a performer. He had come from the streets of Chicago, worked as a bodyguard, and fought his way into Hollywood without connections or formal training. He wasn't about to let anyone make him feel like he didn't belong or didn't deserve his success. What's really interesting is that in most of these cases, both sides had valid points. George Peppard was a trained actor with decades of experience who deserved respect for his craft. Sylvester Stallone was the creator and star of the Rocky franchise who needed to maintain control over his vision. Melinda Coulier was fighting for better representation of women in action television. Carl Weathers wanted to maintain the technical authenticity that had made the Rocky fight scenes so compelling. But Mr. T saw something different in each of these situations. He saw people trying to diminish his contributions, question his abilities, or force him to conform to their expectations of how he should behave. And his response was always the same: absolutely not. The amazing thing is that despite all these behind-the-scenes conflicts and personal tensions, Mr. T's projects were hugely successful. The A-Team ran for 5 seasons and became a cultural phenomenon. Rocky III was a massive box office hit that made both Stallone and Mr. T even bigger stars. His television movies found audiences who connected with his authentic presence and memorable personality. This suggests that Mr. T's instincts about what audiences wanted were often right, even when his methods created friction with his co-workers. People didn't tune in to watch polished performances or technical perfection. They wanted to see someone who felt real and authentic, someone who brought genuine intensity and personality to every scene. Mr. T's conflicts with these 6 actors reveal something important about Hollywood and about the entertainment business in general. There's often a tension between artistic collaboration and individual authenticity, between following established formulas and bringing something new and different to the table. Some actors are natural diplomats who can navigate these tensions smoothly and maintain good relationships with everyone they work with. Others, like Mr. T, are more confrontational and direct in their approach. Both styles can lead to successful careers, but they create very different experiences for everyone involved. The legacy of standing your ground. What's your take on all this? Was Mr. T right to stand his ground so firmly in these situations, or should he have been more willing to compromise and work within the established systems? There are good arguments on both sides. On one hand, Mr. T's refusal to be pushed around probably earned him respect from some people in the industry who saw that he couldn't be intimidated or manipulated. It also helped him maintain his authentic screen presence, which was clearly his biggest asset as a performer. Audiences connected with him precisely because he seemed genuine and uncompromising. On the other hand, his confrontational approach probably cost him some opportunities and made some projects more difficult than they needed to be. Hollywood is a collaborative business, and being able to work well with others is an important skill that can make the difference between a good career and a great one, but maybe that's missing the point. Mr. T wasn't trying to have a typical Hollywood career or follow the usual rules for success in the entertainment business. He was trying to stay true to himself and bring something unique to every role he played. That meant standing up to people who tried to change him or diminish his contributions, even when it created conflict and tension. Looking back at his career now, it's hard to argue with the results. Mr. T became one of the most recognizable and beloved figures in popular culture. His catchphrases became part of the language. His image and personality influenced fashion, television, and movies for decades. Kids who watched the A-Team in the 1980s are now adults who still remember his characters fondly. None of that would have been possible if he had just gone along with what other people wanted him to do or tried to fit into their expectations of how he should behave. His willingness to fight for his vision and defend his approach, even when it made him enemies, is probably what made him such a memorable and lasting figure in entertainment history. These behind-the-scenes battles also show us something about the creative process and how great performances are created. Sometimes the best work comes from conflict and tension rather than smooth collaboration. When different perspectives clash, it can force everyone involved to think harder about what they're trying to achieve and push them to find new solutions. Mr. T's improvisations and suggestions might have frustrated his co-stars and directors, but they often made the final product better and more authentic. His refusal to just follow choreography or stick to the script brought an unpredictable energy to his performances that audiences could feel. The fact that we're still talking about these conflicts decades later shows how memorable and impactful they were. These weren't just personality clashes or professional disagreements. They were clashes between different philosophies about what entertainment should be and how performers should approach their craft. Mr. T represented something that was relatively new in Hollywood at the time, an authentic street presence that couldn't be manufactured or taught in acting school. His co-stars represented the established entertainment industry with its traditions, techniques, and hierarchies. When those two worlds collided, sparks flew. But both approaches contributed something valuable to the projects they worked on together. The tension between them created a dynamic energy that made these shows and movies more interesting and compelling than they might have been otherwise. Why these stories still matter today. These stories about Mr. T's Hollywood conflicts aren't just entertaining gossip about celebrity drama. They reveal something important about authenticity, respect, and staying true to yourself in challenging situations. In today's world, we're constantly being told to compromise, to go along to get along, to not make waves or cause trouble. But Mr. T's example shows that sometimes standing your ground is the right choice, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. He could have easily just followed orders, accepted whatever role other people wanted him to play, and avoided all these conflicts. His career probably would have been smoother and less stressful. But would his performances have been as memorable? Would he have become the cultural icon that he did? Probably not. The thing that made Mr. T special was his refusal to be anything other than himself. That authenticity came through in every role he played and connected with audiences in a way that more polished or diplomatic performances might not have. His story also shows the importance of knowing your own worth and not letting other people define your value. Each of these conflicts started because someone else was trying to diminish Mr. T's contributions or make him feel like he didn't deserve his success. His response was always to remind them, and everyone else, exactly what he brought to the table. That's a lesson that applies far beyond Hollywood. Whether you're dealing with workplace politics, family dynamics, or social situations, there are times when you need to stand up for yourself and make it clear that you won't be disrespected or undervalued. Of course, there's a difference between standing up for yourself and being needlessly confrontational. Mr. T's approach was sometimes more aggressive than it needed to be, and there were probably situations where a more diplomatic response would have achieved the same result with less drama. But the core principle is sound. Don't let other people make you feel less than you are, and don't compromise your authentic self just to make other people more comfortable. The final word. So what do you think about Mr. T's approach to these Hollywood conflicts? Were these epic battles between a street-smart outsider and the entertainment establishment? Or were they unnecessary drama caused by an actor who refused to play by the rules? Maybe they were both. Maybe that's what made them so compelling, and what makes Mr. T such a fascinating figure in entertainment history. He was someone who succeeded on his own terms, even when those terms put him in conflict with some of the biggest names in Hollywood. The fact that he's still remembered fondly by audiences around the world, while some of his critics have been largely forgotten, suggests that his approach worked. People connected with his authenticity and his refusal to be anything other than himself. These behind-the-scenes battles gave us a glimpse into the real personality behind the gold chains and mohawk. They showed us someone who was willing to fight for what he believed in and who never backed down from a challenge, no matter how powerful or famous his opponents were. That's the Mr. T that audiences fell in love with, and that's the legacy that these conflicts helped create. Love him or hate him, you had to respect the fact that he was always completely, uncompromisingly himself. If you enjoyed learning about these incredible behind-the-scenes Hollywood battles, make sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Which of these conflicts surprised you the most? Did any of these stories change how you think about Mr. T or the actors he clashed with? And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories about your favorite celebrities and the drama that happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Trust me, there are plenty more shocking Hollywood secrets where these came from, and you won't want to miss a single one.